Welcome back to the live stage here at the Berlin Congress Center. I'm welcoming everyone who is returning to us from the parallel sessions that have been running for the last 90 or 60 minutes. It's wonderful to have you back with us. In a moment, we're going to be having a multitude of people join us on Zoom with the focus. This is our first round of Spotlight on Citizen Education in Action. Before we go on to our Zoom participants, what I'd like to do is just provide you with a very brief input or a couple of insights into the sessions that were running a moment ago, or up until a moment ago. The first panel discussion was about COVID-19 and the climate change. There was much discussion around sustainable alternatives, more affordable alternatives. That the stimulus package took a first step in the right direction, but further steps are needed, and how to decouple the economic growth from consumption in general. Our China panel was a very passionate debate about China and included hot and contested issues such as, of course, to be expected, human rights, Xinjiang and Taiwan, which were considered to be the best examples of democracy on Chinese soils. The West needs a clever mix of confrontational collaborative policies, and that, of course, China is a changing country and will not remain as it is for the rest of the 21st century. The final point to the China panel was that, of course, citizenship education needs to engage with Chinese academics and students and try to establish a second-track relations, not closing doors, but opening topics as broadly as possible. Having a look at the third session that was running, this was a workshop revolving around European youth work, and a couple of the topics that came up there were simple topics such as language barriers, how to keep the attention with the decreasing attention span that people have, particularly in the virtual environment, and issues as basic as how do we provide young people with hardware, the devices to even be able to engage in the discussions and discourses that are taking place directly targeted at them. The fourth session was about national identity and the differentiation between local, regional, and national identities and how to facilitate such debates from intellectual approaches to actually engaging with the communities themselves, how to ensure that social inclusion is taking place and that real diversity is there, and the sense of agency, which we also heard in our very first talk this morning on the European Green Deal. The next workshop was from Candice, which is the Creative Approaches to New Democracy, and this very much explored creative resources, how to use innovative, inclusive approaches which have an impact on deeper thinking, and how to link this and couple it with citizenship education, the need for more variety in learning activities, the need for experiential, immersive, and effective participation, and how artistic stimuli can connect at an emotional level, the goal being transformational learning. And the final talk was a panel discussion, the unusual suspects, what is going on in Europe's so-called civic deserts, and I'm afraid I don't have any updates on this one, but we will mention this in the next round. So let's please welcome our guests here, the Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action. And to kick off with the first pitch, I'd like to welcome, please, Pavel Henningsen, the Tuesday Conversation. New Europeans is a civil rights organization which champions freedom of movement, non-discrimination, and the principle of solidarity in Europe. Pavel, are you with us?
I am with you. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Wonderful to have you here.
Thanks for coming. And thanks for letting me participate.
Wonderful. Pavel, in fact, I'm going to hand over to you. I will give you a short countdown, a 3, 2, over to you, and then please feel free to begin your pitch. So, 3, 2, over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to talk 2.5 minutes about the Tuesday conversation, which is a tool, a democratic tool that should bring Europeans closer to each other. Every Tuesday evening, we meet online on a subject that is of importance. You see from the screen, last Tuesday, the topic was health. Does an apple a day keep the doctor away? We have a star speaker. This was Sacha Marchand from the European Public Health Authority. And we were then having 4 or 5 other people on screen for a conversation. This was live streamed on Facebook. So it is an attempt to bring Europeans closer to each other via good conversation. Let me show you another slide. This is how we live our lives now. We sit on screen and everybody knows that this is difficult. We prefer to be face-to-face, but now we have to make conversation online. This gives us quite a few challenges individually and collectively. It's also an opportunity, I think, because we can bring people together faster and easier than ever before. And we can bring people together from all corners of the world. So we'll see how we make the new mix of online and face-to-face. That's exciting. Another slide is, this is what it looks like when people meet face-to-face. This is from an event where I had 50 people in a local community gathered around coffee and cake. They didn't know each other in advance. So how do you get people who don't know each other in advance? How do you get them to talk together? Well, the trick is generous amounts of coffee and cake. So that's a tool. And I think basically when you want people to speak to each other, you need to invent new ways of tricking people to lower their barriers. This slide shows my wife's tennis group. And I think democracy happens not everywhere, really, where people meet. You meet around an interest and something that you take an interest in, and then you talk afterwards. So this is my focus group. If a subject is interesting, I check it out with my wife's tennis group. Final slide. I think we must reinvent the way we meet, both virtual and face-to-face. It is crucial if we want to inspire, engage, and motivate each other to take an interest in democracy. Thank you for watching my little 2.5-minute slideshow.
Thank you so much, Pavel. That was just a wonderful kickoff to real citizenship education in action. So the second pitch, I'd like to actually ask Niels Eck Zimmerman to join us. Niels is from the Digital AL, Digital Transformation in Adult Learning for Active Citizenship.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll share my screen.
Yes. And I would also just count you down, Niels, if that's okay. So 3, 2, 1, yes. Over to you. There we go.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to, could you see my screen now?
You.
Yes? Wonderful.
Yes, we can. Mm-hmm.
So it's about the project Digital, which is a collaboration of the Association of German Citizenship Education Organizations with the DARE network and other partners from Europe about digital transformation. And obviously, our mission is to connect the discussions and the learning about digital transformation with civic education, and in particular, EDC HRE, Education for Democratic Citizenship and Human Rights Education. Yeah, my question, or one of the questions which we have in regard to digital transformation, but also in regard to educators and teachers, which are somehow reluctant to tackle this topic is, were you ever criticizing capitalism, although not being an economist? Indeed, people have been criticizing capitalism, also not being economists. And the question related to digital transformation is then, why do we then need to be engineers for co-creating the digital transformation, which we very often assume, since the topic is discussed more from the technical and the data economic perspective, talking about Google, about machines having technoid imagery in the minds, and that's what we should exactly not do. So we think Europe needs active citizens that are able to involve in the discussions about the digital transformation, and they are experienced with digital transformation because it is a transformation. It's not taking place in the future. We are already witnessing it for several decades, and it is transforming our habits in regard to ourselves, our ways how we are using, consuming, and creating culture. It is transforming the economy and also the state. We are discussing for a couple of times digital rights. We in our project have a clear perspective. These are the same rights like the human rights. We just need proper updates of the framing conditions, putting these rights into relevance again. And here again, civic education is required, and civic education needs to come up with new ways to tackle these. So we need motivating and supporting educators that are encouraging learners and also feel encouraged to dive deeper into these aspects. And it is about the democratic visions and the alternatives to the big narratives of digital transformation. We are not talking only about the big tech companies. We are talking also about other kind of options and of paths to digital transformation, like free and open software, like decentralized developments, like open data, like democratic smart cities, and so on. What we do in the digital project is, obviously, we are discussing the first outcome, which we currently produced in a series of a reader. And we'd like to present you also this reader series. You can download them on our website. And we want to initiate a debate inside of the civic education, how we can do this, how we can bring this transversal by nature topic as a transversal topic into civic education. And I'd like to finish with our new website, the DT Tools EU, Digital Transformation Tools EU, because it is for us not about talking about another digital tool. It is about talking about the digital transformation, the bigger picture. So you can join it, you can download the first publications here, and we would like to stay in or come into a conversation with you, with the people from different contexts, different countries, experiencing the discussions quite different, and to get also a European picture inside, because a lot of the discussions and decisions made for the digital transformation are European decisions, which is a little bit under-reflected on the national level. So.
Thank you, Niels.
That's it. Thank you and goodbye.
Yes, thank you so much for those insights. So that was the second pitch. Of in total 7 we'll be listening to. We're moving on now to pitch 3. This is from Magda Tankau. I do apologize if any of the names are mispronounced, and feel free to correct me. I would appreciate it. Magda is going to be presenting European meetings of people experiencing poverty. Magda, are you with us?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Would you like to share your screen, Magda?
Yes, I'm trying to. I hope it's visible now.
Let's just give it a moment. And then, as soon as I see that it's coming up for our audience, I will count you down.
I've shared my screen. So.
Yes. Okay, so if you would like to begin, Magda, 3, 2, 1, over to you.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I am Magda Tankau and I work as participation officer for the European Anti-Poverty Network. What I will present to you now, it might seem as an unusual project, We have been doing this work for the past 18 years, and we hope to be able to continue to do this work. I'm going to present to you the European Meetings of People Experiencing Poverty, which are events organized with 32 national anti-poverty networks, of which people experiencing poverty are members. These are unique events and dedicated spaces for people experiencing poverty to come and present the issues that are of big importance for their lives. They are in the driving seat of the event, they set up the agenda, they do the preparatory work, and they present the most important key messages to the politicians and EU policymakers attending the meeting. We receive financial support from the European Commission through DG Employment for this project. These meetings are not just one-off events, they just give visibility to participative processes that are organized at local and national level. They provide a space for people experiencing poverty to have a real dialogue with politicians and EU key decision makers, because as I'm sure that it was discussed in other spaces of this conference, this is not a thing that needs to be taken for granted, and these people don't have too many spaces for participation and for having a real dialogue with politicians and policymakers. So I think you've understood by now from my presentation that our focus is creating spaces for people experiencing poverty and social exclusion to participate. Every year we work on a different theme. We've worked on access to education, in-work poverty, access to housing, participation of people experiencing poverty. So people experiencing poverty had the chance to present their own view on participation. We usually use highly interactive methodologies in order to give them the opportunity to build up collective analysis and a shared understanding of the theme discussed. During the meeting, we create opportunities for them to make their voices heard and have an open and constructive debate with policymakers, with politicians. And the work doesn't stop here. We do follow-up work with we do follow-up advocacy work, and we try to make sure that politicians and policymakers are acting upon the promises they made during the meeting. Thank you very much. I know I ran a bit over my time. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Magda, you have so much to share with us. It was a pleasure having you here, and thank you for doing that. I'd like to move on now to pitch 4. This is Sam Kebizi, representing let me start that again. AJCM, and it's focusing on the workshop of young citizens of the Mediterranean. Sam, are you with us?
I activate my mic and I'm with you guys.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Sam. I can hear you now. So I'm about to hand over. So 3, 2, 1, and please go ahead.
So I'm pleased to present you the workshop of young citizens of the Mediterranean. We started in 2014 with 70 people from 9 countries, and now we are more further on that process with a lot of people. We engage people from 15 to 30 years old, and it's a space for dialogue, consultation, and action for the Mediterranean youth, with 2 main topics: citizenship engagement and advocacy. We are now based in 19 countries, more than 30 cities, and during the year 2020, we gathered more than 4,000 participants on the action of the AJCM. We have digital tools in 3 languages, French, English, and Arabic. And because of the crisis of the COVID, we moved with much more digital actions. This year, we had a lot of participants in the festival we have each year. And about the commitment and advocacy of this action, the young people choose 3 main topics: environment, gender equality, solidarity, mobility. We manage space for building those semantics, but we have also a cluster for advocacy, and we are creating at the end of the month the first Youth Mediterranean Assembly with the support of the Région Sud. And our plan for 2022 is to develop a stronger partnership. So if you are interested in Mediterranean youth and citizenship education, if you have resources, if you can support us or be part of the workshop, don't hesitate. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Another inspiring project and just a further wonderful example of how citizenship education is already in action if we just simply look up and look around us. I'd like to move on to pitch 5. This is Marie Cucurella. Marie is representing Peace Jam. The topic is creating young change makers across Europe. Marie, are you with us? You may need to unmute.
Yes, hello. Yeah, my laptop
Marie.
was a bit slow and putting
Wonderful.
the sharing screen at the same time and unmuting. But do you see my screen?
I do indeed see your screen. Lovely to have you here.
Perfect.
And I will hand over 3, 2, 1, Marie.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you for being here. I hope you're having a nice time at the conference so far. Thanks for the introduction, Tanja. My name is Marie, and today I want to present you with the work we do with Peace Jam and how we use citizenship and peace education to inspire young change makers. So that's what we do. We inspire, we train, and support young people to become committed to positive change. How do we do that, you may ask? We have 3 pillars, which are inspiration, education, and action. You may have seen in the slide before, we work with Nobel Peace Prize winners, and that's the inspiration part. Our education programs are based on the lives and on the life values of these Nobel Peace Prize winners. And after they've followed our programs, the young people have the opportunity to meet and to engage in conversation with them during conferences. Education is crucial to that, and we offer a curriculum that develops certain skills. So empathy, identity, building community, being inclusive, and overcoming stereotypes. We also have other curriculum. They follow this program for some months. And the last and most important part is taking action, is also the last chapter of our curriculums, of all of them. And in there, we support young people and teachers and youth workers in step-by-step guidance for projects. We also offer some mini-grants and financial support for young people, and we offer a platform for dissemination that is called Be an Act of Peace. What is crucial for us is that the projects are youth-led, so that young people are leading every single step of the process. And as I mentioned, we train the teachers and we train the youth workers to support them effectively. Next week we're organizing our very first online event due to the circumstances. It's also our first pan-European event. There will be young people from 8 countries coming. We can engage on House Space to discuss it. You're of course very invited to join. And we'll feature Jodie Williams, who's the Nobel Peace Prize, who banned landmines. Thanks.
Thank you, Marie. Lovely. And thank you so much for mentioning that the details of all of these projects are on House Space. There's a dedicated page to all of the pitches that will be taking place today. We're about to hear the last 2 of 7 for now, but we have a further 6 to come at 2 different intervals today, so please keep joining in with us. Moving on to pitch 6, Jakob Erle is going to be presenting this one. It is the SDG Dialogue Game for Learning and Action. I'd just like to say a couple of words to Jakob. He is the director of the International Academy for Education and Democracy based in Copenhagen, Denmark. He has almost 40 years of experience with civic education in Denmark, Europe, the Arab world, and also global projects. He's also the Secretary General of NECE, the network of Civic Education. What he's going to be presenting to us here is a project on sustainable development goals, democracy and globalization. Jakob, may I welcome you?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me in this short time. And thank you for listening, everybody out there. If we want to relate to anything important, like COVID or climate change, then we will have to not forget the other connected challenges. If you see in the bottom of the screen, you see the targets of the SDGs that relate to health. But if we don't relate to extreme poverty to the left or to urbanization and housing, nothing will work. So we have a common agenda coming from the UN and from all the world's governments that actually makes it possible for us to think about that. What we also need to think about is how we relate to the institutions, to the rulemaking, how we do that. And we need, as people, to relate to that at all levels, from local to global. So that's essential if we are to do anything. So we have made this learning tool and action tool that makes it possible for people in all ages to discuss how we do that. So people use this in smaller groups around to discuss how they can relate to the challenges and how they see the connected challenges and the governance and their own action. So that's a possibility to work with us, simply to use this tool and to do that. But it's also possible, because we need that to make localized versions of this, because the issue of drinking water is different in Cairo in the top right or in a wet climate. So we work with localized versions of this as well, and that's possible. And then it's possible also, and we are not quite there yet, to have partners who develop their own versions of this and use our database to make ultra-localized version of this that can enable also these local places will discuss with each other the important issues combined with the SDGs. And it's possible to contact us for more information, and we are open to cooperation with anyone everywhere in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jakob. Another inspirational project. We're moving on to the 7th project we're representing right now in this session. And this is going to be presented by Tommy Ngo Phan. And it is about the Youth Democracy Award. Tommy, are you with us? Okay. We seem to have lost, have we got Tommy? There we go. Could you potentially unmute, Tommy? I can't hear you yet. We can see the presentation, but can't yet hear you.
Hello.
Ah, there we go. Hello, Tommy. Lovely to have you online with us.
I just had to change from mobile because I don't have the presentation right now. Okay. Let's just begin. All right.
Okay.
Hello.
All right, that's wonderful. Then, Tommy, I will hand over to you now.
Okay. Hello, my name is Tommy. I'm from the jury from the Youth Democracy Award. And I just tell you what is it. The Youth Democracy Award is a PR project which is founded in 2008. And it's a project from young people for young people, where we award every year young people who just engage in social and democratic projects around the globe or just in Germany. And yeah, this is our jury contains from 16 to 70 years old people, around from 20 people. And every year we meet and discuss and talk about which project we're going to honor and award for this year. And yeah, what is the Youth Democracy Award? And the Youth Democracy Award is as an award where we can I'm sorry, I'm totally nervous. I didn't do that.
Tommy, you do realize that we have a whole hour around the youth, or 45 minutes at least, later on today, where there'll be lots of details provided. What would you like to still share with us today?
Okay, I'm sorry. It's a project from Young People for Young People, and therefore this project supports other projects. It could be smaller projects or bigger projects, and I think that's the best thing about the Youth Democracy Award is that you can change something for young people to support them. You can also educate yourself about it, and yeah, I think that's it. And this year we've got 88 projects for the Youth Democracy Award from around the globe, which we got from Hong Kong, USA, and Mexico. And yeah, I think today we're going to know much more about it, because today we're going to award this year our 2 winners.
Indeed.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, but thank you very much for this pitch.
Thank you, Tommy. And you actually mentioned one of the exceptional situations about the Youth Democracy Award this year, and the fact is that there are 2 winners. But join us later today and hear all about it, and in fact meet the winners of this award. I'm sure they would welcome your presence there. So we are nearly finished with this short session. There's going to be a brief break before the second round of parallel sessions begin, and they'll be beginning at 2 o'clock. I'd like to give you just a very brief overview of what these sessions are going to be. So there'll be, in fact, this time 4 panel discussions. The first is about whether there is a role for NGOs in the transformation of society. A further panel discussion is We Believe We Can, We'll Win, and focuses on art activism. The third panel is The Future of Democracy and the 14 Million. So Voters Without Borders and Democratic Reforms on the Agenda of the COFOE, C-O-F-O-E. Our final panel discussion has the title Unavailable and Inaccessible, Schools Closures, Students' Voice. And the 2 workshops that will be running as of 2 o'clock, the first one is One Framework, Many Contexts, How Can This Work? And it's looking at the Council of Europe's reference framework of competencies for democratic culture and its potential. And the final workshop is focusing on youth engagement and civic education in times of pandemic and beyond, and very much looking into best practices. And the European Youth Parliament will be curating this one. So I hope that you will join us again or join one of these sessions at 2 o'clock. And I wish you a very pleasant short break, and we will meet again here shortly.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Okay, so hello and welcome everybody. I kindly ask you all the participants on the chat, on the call, to stay muted and only unmute yourself when you take the floor. And we are live, so okay, welcome everybody again to the NECE Conference 2020 and to this panel discussion entitled The Future of Democracy and the 14 Million. Voters Without Borders and Other Democratic Reform on the agenda of the Conference of Europe. So yeah, with the German presidency of the EU Council and the strong civil society ecosystem also striving and campaigning for democracy and electoral rights, in normal conditions, this would have been the occasion for us to launch the ECI Voters Without Borders in Germany and in Austria as well, since for those circumstances, we have to cancel also an event that we plan in Austria. So we thought of merging the two. Yeah, it would have been the occasion to find the support needed to reach the target signatures in these two countries. As you know, our campaign will run for over 1 year, during which we have to collect 1 million signatures to ask the Commission to discuss our proposal for full political rights in the EU. But there are already all the signs that the period of signature collection is going to be extended from 3 to 6 months. So yeah, what our European Citizen Initiative aims for who doesn't know yet, is trying and ensuring that the 14 million EU citizens living in another member states of the EU can benefit from functioning electoral system and have a voice in decisions that affect their lives in their country of residence, not only for local and European election, but also for regional, national, and referenda. So, as we believe, in fact, that freedom movement cannot come at the cost of losing your voting rights. So, the program of today actually consists of looking at the bigger ECI, like the bigger picture. So how can an ECI be an instrument of European civic education, especially for the youth? And in this case, I mean, we will take also a bit into example our own ECI and the task force, so that to put it into the context of the NECE conference. And after we will discuss more into detail, so the local opportunities there are to run a successful campaign in Germany and Austria. And finally, we will examine also political rights and other democratic reforms on the agenda of the conference on the future of Europe and from inside the European Parliament as well. So Team Voters Without Borders has also produced an advocacy paper in German. And you can find it also, I think, in the chat. My colleague Ben will provide. And there we present the policy paper in detail, the people's opinion that we've been collecting, facts and figures of our policy proposal. So before going into this discussion, I'd like to give the word to Sabine Leutheusser-Schnadenberger, if I pronounce it correctly, former Federal Minister of Justice for Germany and now a Deputy Chairwoman of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, which we want to thank for the support and for making also this event possible together with the NECE. So please, Sabine, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, dear Anna Comaccio. You can also say Sabine, that's a little bit more easier. Dear participants across the EU, dear citizens, representatives and members of parliament, national or European ones, dear panelists. It is with great pleasure and also some regrets that I'm speaking to you today. With regrets because the global pandemic forces us to reconnect digitally and we cannot meet in person in Berlin. Berlin, the capital of my home country, where the fall of the Berlin Wall more than 30 years ago seemed like the final victory for democracy. Today, our model of liberal democracies is challenged once again. We live in a world where a leader of a country, the world's second largest democracy, suggests to stop the vote count in an election because the outcome may not favor him. We live in a world where disinformation and fake news sow distrust and endanger our democracy by relentlessly playing on the fears and prejudices of people in order to influence their voting behavior. It is therefore a vital task of liberal democracies worldwide to stick to and stand up for democratic values. This is why I am all the more pleased to speak at the NECE Conference this year today, and in particular to open this panel on the future of democracy and the 14 million on behalf of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom, an opportunity for which I would also like to thank the co-hosting organizations, Voters Without Borders and NECE. History teaches us that we need to cherish democracy, for which civic education and active citizenship are crucial more than ever. In the aftermath of the First World War in 1918, the German liberal Friedrich Naumann created a new approach to democratic development by establishing his School of Citizenship in Berlin. Naumann was convinced that in a successful democratic system, we need citizens who understand the procedures, trust in democratic rules, and become personally involved. This is still true, and Europe, as well as the European Union, are no exception to this. The EU is not a project of bureaucratic elites, as many claim. Rather, it is a community of nowadays 446 million citizens, making it the third largest after China and India. And Europeans care about their Europe and the future of democracy. Last year, the European elections have seen a turnout of slightly over 50%, the highest in 25 years. Also, identification with the EU and the feeling of shared community has never been that high. Out of 10 respondents find identity as European citizens. Such a feeling of shared heritage and common belonging emerges by committing to a set of shared European values: freedom, democracy, equality, rule of law, and respect for human rights, which are enshrined in the treaties. It also emerges through the enjoyment of these values and rights and through active political participation. Both citizen rights and political participation are also linked to today's discussions on voting rights and democratic reform. European treaties confer fundamental rights to every EU citizen, especially in the framework of EU citizenship provisions in Article 18 to 25 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the EU. Among them are free movement, which is all the more precious in times of COVID-19, and democratic rights, such as standing and voting in European elections in any EU member state, or to initiate and support a European Citizens' Initiative. While these achievements are remarkable, we need to think further ahead. In addition to transnational lists, which the European liberal family, as well as some of today's panelists, actively advocated for, it is important to ensure electoral rights of mobile EU citizens. In certain situations, there is an imbalance between the electorate and the non-voting population. The latter also shapes a region or a country, pays taxes in the same way as eligible voters, and may form an integral part of civil society. Yet they have no political voice in the host country they currently reside in. No taxation without representation is a liberal principle. Innovation might be needed to adapt the law to political challenges of the 21st century, and the ECA Voters Without Borders proposes solutions in this regard. Likewise, innovation and political participation are also needed for the conference on the future of Europe. It should have already been in full swing if it was not for COVID-19. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced this democratic experiment to address multiple challenges the EU is currently facing, with the aim to make it fit for the future. The conference bears great opportunities, but also numerous challenges in itself. In order to succeed, its structure must be simple, inclusive, and citizen-oriented. The aim must be strengthen Europe's democracy and focus on the key future issues to transform Europe into a country of opportunities and motor for progress. For this, civic education and an active citizenship are vital. In that regard, and without further ado, I am looking forward to hearing the ideas and thoughts from our panelists today and wish you all fruitful discussions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for these inspiring words, and also for setting already the initiative in a broader set of proposals to discuss in this conference for our next generation, so to speak. Okay, so I just want to do a small thing that if you haven't joined the house-based community, you can do so also in the link in the chat, and you can then join also all other events happening during the NECE conference. And of course, you can leave the comments in the chat, and also if you have the chance to raise your hand, you can do it, especially panelists are invited to intervene also at any other time of the discussion, or if the times allow it, of course. So moving to the first point of our discussion, I'm going to hand now the floor to Tony Venables, founder of ECIT, so Foundation of European Citizen Rights, Involvement and Trust, to Daniela Vancic as well from Democracy International, the program manager for European projects. And she has been done also extensive work on ECIs, and also to Christian Huisman, sorry for that, from Bertelsmann Stiftung, project manager for the Future of Democracy program. So Tony, if you want to start.
Thank you very much, Anna. I'm going to try to be fairly brief because my internet connection is not very good. I sent in a speech in writing, so if things break down, it can be sent to the other speakers and participants. I'd like to begin by saying just a quick word about the ECIT Foundation on European citizenship. We're trying to bring together the very scattered stakeholders in civil society, the academic world and policymakers around this concept. We have a big event coming up on 1st and 2nd of December. We produce guidelines on European citizenship, which I think say something very relevant to the NECE conference. We'd like to see the EU and the Conference on the Future of Europe put into their recommendations a right of every EU citizen to be informed of their citizenship status, and to recognize that that is not good enough unless every child receives some citizenship.
Tony, if you take out your camera, you perhaps can go
education on. About what? Okay, I switch off the camera. Okay. And in turn, is able to practice this knowledge. So we're looking for a guarantee of an Erasmus for all, which would make European citizenship more equal and build a transnational citizenship, the first of the modern age, from the bottom up. Okay, so our foundation is supporting a task force of Erasmus students led by Anna Comaccio, and we're demanding full political rights for EU citizens. The objective is to make the existing legislation on the rights of EU citizens to vote and stand in municipal and European elections work properly, and to extend these rights to regional elections, national elections, and referendums. Anyone following the US presidential election will appreciate how vital this ECI is. If we succeed, we will remove a stain on European democracy, take a step towards better integration of migrants in their host country, and contribute to less nationalistic, more European politics. This is also relevant, I think, to the discussions here at NECE about European citizenship education, because European citizens' initiatives are really the gold standard of active citizenship education. The organizers have 1 year to collect over 1 million signatures, meeting minimum thresholds in 7 member states. Only 6% of ECIs have succeeded so far. The advantage of simulating or working on an actual ECI is that you have to have a very specific goal, which is within the legal competence of the EU. So you're working in a very clear regulatory framework. You have to have a wide range of specializations. There is a lot of multitasking.
Lost you, Tony.
You have to have their political institutions. It's breaking down.
Now it's okay. Yeah.
And civil societies. To meet this challenge, we have defined 3 work packages for the task force: research, communication, and advocacy. What have we achieved so far on each? Well, on research, the first of these so far, as Anna has pointed out, the task force has produced a 35-page report in English and in German, which we really urge you to read. Did you, for example, that in the 2000, although turnout increased, as the last speaker pointed out, only 10% of some 17 million mobile EU citizens voted where they live, and only 20% back in their country of origin. Of course, electoral systems differ across Europe, as they do in the US states, but at least there is a federal voter assistance program. If you read your material, we hope you'll ask yourselves, why is it possible for EU citizens to vote in elections at city level in Paris, but not here in Berlin or in Vienna? Why is it that we've collected stories like the Dane who could not vote either in the recent Vienna city election or back home? And will people really vote in second-order elections where they live, where if they can't vote in the ones which really count, the national ones? Okay, I come to communication. What have we done there? The population of what since Brexit has now become 14 million EU citizens is an incredibly difficult group to reach, very, in the nature of things, very scattered. So our task force has mapped over 700 Facebook groups and has created its own one. So there's a lot of work to be done in bottom-up communication, but also top-down communication is needed. I mean, we're thinking of more high-profile campaigns like All I Want for Christmas is a Vote. We're trying with the established press. We've had a very good article in the Economist, which made exactly the same point as the previous speaker, that no taxation without representation is not a bad slogan. There's been an article in the Süddeutsche Zeitung, in a lot of online newspapers and regional journals. However, ECIs do not sit very well with the administrative culture of the European Commission. There is a need for a lot more public awareness of ECIs and a lot more mainstream media support. Anna is nodding, which is encouraging that you're able to hear me. I come to the third point about advocacy. And there I'd like to say that there is a lot of skepticism around about whether ECIs really work, because even if you're in the 6% and collect 1 million signatures, there's no guarantee that the Commission will act on the results. There is a hearing in the European Parliament, but there is no guarantee of success. Well, actually, we don't share this skepticism, because we saw when we submitted our ECI that it received a very positive decision by the Commission, that it was within its legal competence. And now the Commission has included the reform of the existing directives on the limited political rights of EU citizens in its legislative proposal for 2021. So advocacy is going to become very important. We'll have to mount a citizens' lobby to campaign for reforms of the existing directives. And we're looking to the European Parliament to take an initiative in parallel to ours to propose a European electoral law to give full political rights to EU citizens. But we also need to persuade regional and national politicians, because ultimately the decision rests with them. And it's for that reason we're extremely glad that there is a regional politician present and that we are taking our campaign out of Brussels to Berlin. I hope that this gives you an idea of where we stand with this campaign, of what we've achieved so far. And I say this because we would like you to take it over, whether in Berlin, Munich, or Cologne, from where other speakers come, and in the cities across Europe where NECE participants are sitting in front of their screens and we hope are looking for action. Please sign the ECI now and persuade your family, friends, and professional network to do the same. If you want to do more, the task force can provide you with a full campaign package. In conclusion, I'd like to say that at the opening session yesterday, it was said we need to think big in this period of unprecedented change. I think we need an ECI to focus attention on the NECE Declaration and get the EU to act on European citizenship education. I also think we need to see the bigger picture and remember that Voters Without Borders is not just about the rights attached to freedom of movement and migration in Europe, but that it is also the last stage in the struggle for universal suffrage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tony, for pointing out and do an overview of what we did so far, what we have achieved, but also for remarking that obviously if you are not a big lobby organization, trade union, or a big umbrella organization, there are also few chances to succeed in the long term. So maybe I turn the question to Daniela and Christian on how we can make this. So how can an ECI really work for the youth, on both sides, how can we make it work, and also for the youth to sign more ECIs, perhaps, I don't know, lowering the age, what do you think can be done, and also in terms of our ECI, where do you see the added value perhaps of this ECI being carried out by the youth?
Should I go ahead and go first? First, thanks so much for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here on behalf of Democracy International, and we're really proud to officially support this campaign. Just to go over a bit, aside from really just being an absolutely great topic to start an ECI on, I wanted to speak about some of the concrete changes to the ECI that this initiative has benefited from, and that has made then campaigning much easier. Will be also easier than for young people to get involved, as you asked, Anna. So this is actually a good time to start an ECI on this topic. And I know you're thinking, well, we have a pandemic. How can this possibly be a good time to campaign? But first of all, the new regulation of the ECI just went into effect on the 1st of January of this year, and that was an over 2-year-long revision process where civil society, we as Democracy International, and with so many other organizations, we were really heavily involved in campaigning for a user-friendly ECI, as user-friendly as we could have it. So now that the new regulation has went into effect, ECIs like Voters Without Borders can really benefit from these new rules of the game, we call them. First of all, they were able to choose their own start date of their campaign anytime within a 6-month time frame from the day that they were approved and registered by the Commission. Whereas last year, if they would have registered this last year, the day that your campaign would have started would have been the day that you were registered by the Commission. So that day countdown to 1 year starts, and you don't really get a lot of heads up ahead of time. So of course that's not very campaigner friendly, and I know how much that extra 6 months of preparation helped these campaigners. I think they were one of the first, if not the first, to benefit in this change of regulation this year. What they've also benefited from is in the new regulation is the less burdensome data requirements to sign an ECI. Now, there are probably a lot less paper signatures than usual this year, but any paper signatures, there are only 2 different sets of data. One require a personal ID number and one doesn't. And member states are really have to decide whether they will require an ID number or not. But also by online signatures, which I'm assuming are much more relevant right now. The data requirements are not only much more simplified, because this is of course also automatically generated on the website, the online form, but the data that is asked is also not as complicated. So for example, in the past, signatories from Greece were asked on their forms to fill out their grandfather's last name, for example. So that's not the case anymore, and it's just much more straightforward and easy, which of course will help also bring the youth in, because as a young person, you're thinking, why am I giving this kind of data? Where, as young people, we're a little bit more aware, and what are we putting out then on the internet? Who's really checking this? And so this is the kind of information you're thinking, why is this really relevant? So I think this is a point that's going to help bring in also a lot of young people. What else is new that really helps campaigners this year is that the ECI Forum has been established. Last year, this was a pilot project of the European Commission, and now it's fully established and running. So what the ECI Forum is basically an online collaborative platform. It's like a help desk for organizers or future organizers, people who are just thinking of launching an ECI, to be able to connect with each other and to discuss possible initiative topics. And there are many features that are also offered on there. We as Democracy International have been calling for something like this to be set up for a really long time now. And in fact, together with the organization ECAS and the ERI, Initiative and Referendum Institute, we were running the ECI Support Center. We were doing this until last year, which was offering expert campaigning, fundraising, and legal advice to ECI organizers. And now the ECI Forum offers that in an official capacity. So we're doing that now with much more capacity and much more possibilities now through the ECI Forum. And I know definitely Voters Without Borders have consulted the forum as well a few times and received campaigning and fundraising advice. So I think it's really great that there's such a help desk that exists and a platform exists now for organizers, which should then in the end also make it much more easier to organize and start an ECI. In addition to that, there's also, webinars, how to campaign, how to fundraise, how to find partners. So some really helpful content on the ECI Forum. So there's a lot of benefits that are out there already that this initiative has benefited from. A lot of things have changed in the regulation, in the follow-up to ECIs. It was just mentioned by Tony that, of course, it's not guaranteed that your initiative, if you reach 1 million signatures, that you will get a response from the Commission. But what has changed in the last, I believe it was 1.5 years ago, is that the European Parliament now holds a public hearing on every single successful ECI with the possibility of a vote as well. This was not the case before. So it's much easier to follow the lifeline of an ECI in the European Parliament than it is in the Commission, where it kind of goes in a back room and it's decided there. It's not really an open live stream event like it is in the European Parliament. So this is also very good news for ECIs. And just to maybe a plus side on that, the fact that even the European Parliament does this now, that it holds a public hearing with the possibility of a vote for every successful ECI. This is thanks also to civil society efforts. Really the campaigns of Democracy International with the ECI campaign and many other organizations were behind that about 1.5 years ago. So there's a lot of civil society support in the ECI. Sometimes we see it as like a really, a tool that's for only professionals can use it, and you have to be really, you have to have this huge database of 1 million signatures already even to be able to launch. But there's a lot of small NGOs that are behind this too, that are supporting it. And I think when you make these connections, this is how ECIs can become successful.
Yeah, I think now, Anna, it's my turn. Thank you very much, Daniela and Tony, for your inputs. And Anna, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. I'm very glad to be here. Because we at the Bertelsmann Stiftung are currently working in our project, Democracy and Participation in Europe. We aim at making the EU more democratic, more citizens-friendly, more participatory, and we are in our neighbor project working on electoral rights, the right to vote, to how this turns out. So your ECI is the perfect combination about this, and that's why I'm very, very glad to contribute here to this. You ask me what, or you ask us, what can we do? What can the ECI do to be successful, to encourage the young people to participate? And I would say that perhaps I'm the wrong one to make this suggestion, but one could say to be successful, especially for your ECI, I would go to the same road Daniela mentioned: target the young. Yeah, go for young people to sign the ECI, and I will tell you why. And what I hope is a very brief comment on this. Yeah, why are the young people so especially important for the ECI, and why is the ECI so especially important for the young in our point of view? I totally agree with Mrs. Leuthauser-Schnarrenberger and Friedrich Naumann, who said we need citizens who get involved and to know how democracy works. I totally agree with this. This is the foundation of every democracy. Every democracy needs people who love democracy and who are carrying out their democratic rights. Yeah, and I would even say the EU knows this as well, and young European people know this as well, because just to cite the EU itself in the Treaty on the Functioning of the EU, there it says the Union action shall be aimed at encouraging young people to participate in the democratic life in Europe. Yeah, this is the side of the EU. So the EU knows that young people are important for the EU, and young people know that the EU is important for them, for their future life. Because when you see at how the valuation of the EU turns out in the younger age groups, it's normally every time you ask the people, up to 15 percentage points higher in the younger age group than in the older age groups. So young people value the EU a lot more than older people. So one could say democratic life, ECI and the young people that fit perfectly together. And this is even more true if you look on how young people like to get involved. Yeah. And I would say the ECI is a perfect tool for young people to get involved. Why? Because it's digital, it's topical, and it's not bound to a lot of time spent in the involvement. You can spend a lot of time and try to gather other people to sign this, your ECI, or in another ECI you want to sign, but you can just sign an ECI. It's very simple, and that's one first step to learn how to get involved in a participatory process, in a democratic process. Yeah, and that's why I would say get young people to be interested in your specific ECI, because I think it's very easy for them to get involved in an ECI. And if you show them that they can get involved in this tool, because this is the big problem. A lot of people don't know that the ECI as such exists. And I think a lot of people even don't know that your ECI exists. But if they know that they can participate and that they can make their voice be heard, all our research, all our studies show that if they know that they are able to participate and they have the right to participate, that this creates interest in participation. The same counts for the right to vote. If you are able to vote, if you, for example, lower the voting age from 18 to 16, as done in Austria, you see that more people, more younger people get interested in politics, and that even the voter turnout in the younger age groups, 16 to 20, will turn out a lot higher than before, because the right to participation creates interest in participation. So to sum it all up, I think your ECI combines the best of both worlds. First, it's an ECI in itself, very easy to support democratic tool. It aims as a tool, for in my point of view, to the interests of young people, easy to support, digital, topical, and with the opportunity to get more involved. And it targets a topic which young people who are very, very more mobile than older people geographically in Europe, who who only know open borders, yeah, that they have the right to vote even in other countries. I think this is much more relatable to young people, yeah, and so that's why I think all you have to do is to get this ECI known among young people and to let them know that they can have their voice be heard through this European democratic tool. And at a last sentence, you asked me what else can we do to support perhaps the ECI in itself, and as you already mentioned, I would say, lower the participation age from 18 to 16 over all the member states, just as Malta and Austria already did. Because the ECI, to be clear, it's not voting; it's more or less an online petition with the possibility of having more impact. But why not start early? Why not give young people more rights to participate? So, coming back to my first statement, so they get involved and know how democracy works.
Thank you very much to all of you for this really interesting and intervention. Yeah, a lot of inputs, and I think you're totally right when you say that it is a question of making the tool known and people know there is an ECI sign, so that there is an ECI community. Because a lot of time, even like law university, they use through the ECI tool stuff, but nobody ever tell you more. They don't put that so much emphasis that it's from the citizens for citizens. So I think when they know a little bit, they don't know until they participate or they sign one. So it's I hope you can hear me well, but if not, I move on immediately to participation is an important element, and now if we are thinking about our campaign and how for it to kick off in Germany, I'll leave the word to Christian, that maybe he can agree with Christian Mieß from Citizens for Europe. He can give us a bit the background of voting rights issue in Germany, Berlin, and okay. Also, he's been involved in voting rights network of local campaigns at European level. So, please, Christian, I'll leave the word with you.
Hello.
Problem.
Thanks, Anna. It's okay. Thank you very much for inviting me, and being able to represent the voting rights networks in Germany is a real big honor, because we've been working on these participatory issues for a decade right now. But let me just say, first of all, that this whole tool of the ECI, I'm very happy to support it and be a co-signator here, because using a tool of direct democracy to shape the representative system that we have in Europe, representative democratic system, is something truly new. And it's not only that, but the second part is really we can now, with the help of this tool, also connect all the different initiatives that have been working on voting rights on national level to the European level. So for the first time, there's a real connection between all of those, because what we have is actually a fragmented system. Like in every country, we have a different voting rights regime. In all the countries have different realities on the ground, which means you have to adapt to different timetables all the time. And you really, you hardly have the chance to get all the people together in one room and to work on one thing at one time. I shared already the link to our campaign called We Vote, Wir wählen in German, and we are trying to set up a European network that also supports the ECI in this case. And I totally agree with what has been said so far. The more people decide, the better the decisions we get, across Europe. And so introducing this little campaign that we running here, we're also preparing something for the general elections in Germany 2021. Our target group is not only the EU citizens, but actually also the third country nationals that have been deprived of their voting rights for quite some time, living, and I speak only for Germany here, and Germany for an average of over 15 to 20 years. third country nationals do not even have the right to stand in local elections as European citizens have. So there's already a big divide already in that community. And the aim has to be to integrate all citizens, all people in poverty into the political system. And we have been trying to do this simply because of the understanding that every vote should count. And we see how important that is. And we have the strong conviction that we cannot afford any political apathy in any European country. So going back to the German campaign, where this is basically a set of organizations that has been working on this, for decades, actually. We stand on the shoulder of giants with our small campaigns. People have been trained on voting rights campaigns and trying to fight for the right to stand and participate in elections since the early 60s, 70s. And so we're in a long tradition. We see ourselves in a long tradition there. And what we're trying to do in the next year, something that we hope also to spread across Europe, are symbolic elections. We try to get people to vote in regional and local and also on national level in a symbolic way. This way we engage people, we try to mobilize people to actually make them aware of the fact that they're not able to cast their votes in a real way. And we've been setting up this network for the last, for 3 years now, and trying to do this in 2021. And the most important thing, I think, when it comes to mobilize people is to gain their trust. There have been campaigns all over, and it's really hard to tell people, hey, look, we have to fight for this again, for this thing that we actually think is normal, that we think is actually, is there for everybody. And to realize that it's not is something that strikes people very hard, and it's tough to gain the trust when it comes to like they hardly have the feeling that they can really change something. And with the ECI, we hope to change that as well. I could go much deeper into this, but I'm really also looking forward to hearing from Helmut Brennstetter from Austria, because as far as I know, there have been also campaigns like this, like, for example, from the SOS Mitmensch, who have been campaigning on this in Vienna for the last elections, and were also very, very successful in mobilizing and working with these people, people deprived of voting rights. So I stop here for now. I'm happy to answer all the different questions you might have. I already shared some of those in the house space, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Okay, I am back. I hope you can hear me well now. Perfect. So thank you very much, Christian, for giving this overview and also for mentioning the points of indeed the country national. As our campaign also tried to address, of course, it's not in the EU competence, it's when the country national, but it is in our obviously to, and we want really this much more at the national level. So it should be definitely for local and European election. We have to get for it as much as possible the campaign. So, look forward again. I know that you mentioned also Vienna, perhaps Mr. Helmut Brennstetter, who is a member of the Austrian Parliament for the NEOS party. You can take the word and tell us your point of view from an Austrian perspective. Thanks.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So, dear friends, if I'm allowed to say so, thank you very much for the invitation. I will talk about the Vienna election because it's a very important point. But before that, let me say I'm a young politician. I'm not a young man, as you can see, but I'm a young politician, just in politics for 1 year. And I spent most of my life in journalism, newspaper and television, both in Austria and in Germany, also for a long time as a correspondent, and then also a CEO of NTV, German news channel. So I see both situations, Austria and Germany. But which was most influential for me as far as Europe is concerned was a stage internship at the European Commission nearly 40 years ago, 1981, when I was there as a young man. And why do I tell you that? Because I want to talk about emotions. I'm listening now nearly for an hour, and it was very interesting, and there's so many interesting things, how we can organize ECIs and so on and so forth. But I think that's what it's all about, is emotions. Europe was a very strong emotional feeling for very many people, and I'm not sure about how this is today. I can tell you that when I was young, when I was in Brussels in 81, sometimes we young people, I was born in 1955, we talked about it that probably our fathers were shooting each other. And we were sitting here together, working together, having fun, and so on and so forth, and also talking about the future of Europe, that what we can do. So it was both. It was if you want to say so, the negative emotion. We never want to live through what our parents had to live through, but it was also the positive emotion. How can we build up in Europe? How can we work together? What can we do to live in peace in Europe? And as I said, it's very much an emotional thing. And that's what I miss about Europe and all these complicated things. I read so much now what the European Commission is telling us. And if you have any question, the European Commission will have an answer. But very seldom I see an emotional answer. And I think that's so important. And that's so important. And I think the voting right is a very good one. So I come to the Vienna question now. There's more than a third of the people living in Vienna were not allowed to vote in our September elections because they are not Austrian citizens. And there was a big, as I mentioned before, there was already a big discussion about that. And of course, people against these voting rights, they said, many of those people are able to become Austrian citizens. Why don't they do that? If they are Austrian citizens, of course, they are able to vote. Why don't they do that? Okay, one of the answers, not all, not the whole answer, but one of the answers could be, of course, European citizenship. It's also one point which I think is a very strong emotion, but nobody talks about it anymore, especially here in Austria. Normally in discussions, you don't hear very much about European citizenship, except for one question. The government we had before, where the right-wing FPÖ was part of the government, they wanted Austrian citizenship for German South Tyroleans. And then our answer, for instance, was, why give them Austrian citizenship, give them European citizenship? And that is already the answer to that question. So that's what I also would ask, and also would discuss, how can we bring more emotions to this question and the whole European thing. And of course, we know that right-wing parties, populist parties use emotions, very much nationalistic emotions, and nationalism is probably getting stronger. But on the other hand, if we explain to people where are the advantages of being together in Europe, then we have to rely on each other, that we need each other, also could be a strong emotion. And last word, as we now follow the American elections, it's a sentence which I hear since I'm a kid. Every vote counts, and every vote is important. And politicians always say, "Please go," because every vote is important. As we see now in Georgia, in Nevada, in Pennsylvania, it's true. Every vote counts, and it's probably comes down to a question of a few votes or a few hundred votes, who is going to win. So that's probably the only good thing which we have in this difficult situation now in the United States, that the sentence "every vote is important" is really true. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I remind that also the other speaker, if they have something to answer back, they are free to do it. And but I will leave the word to the others in our panel. So also,
May I just say one more? If I don't know if there's space for a commercial break, because I just wrote a book about last wake-up call for Europe. And what I try to argue is that if we in Europe, if we don't manage within the next few years to be a stronger community, it will slowly but surely fall apart. And that's my greatest fear. If we don't explain to people why it's so important to have a united Europe, then it will not explode. You know, there will not be a revolution against Europe, but it will get less and less important within the states, and nationalism will grow. And I think that's a real danger for Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. I see in the chat that Mr. Tobias Gotthard has probably some problem with connection. I don't know if you want to try, or it's not connected anymore. Well, I guess you cannot see his message in the chat. So yeah, maybe we can connect later. And in the meantime, I'll pass the word to Jürgen Goethe, researcher and professor at Eci School of Governance and Center for European Affairs. He also worked extensively in civil society in Germany, in Europe, and so maybe you can tell us more. So going back to Germany, based on the civil society ecosystem, what do you think? How do you think we can reach this campaign in Germany, and thanks to civil society, youth, now politicians? So how can we find synergy between these things?
Do you hear me now? Hello? Yeah, okay. So thank you very much for being invited to this very interesting meeting. And I'm very happy to participate in that, not least because it gives me the opportunity to see and meet my old friend and colleague, Professor Justin Greenwood, for the first time after years and years and years. We have met, I think it was a long time ago. Secondly, I have to say I'm not a specialist of ECIs. I have just after your invitation started to get involved a little bit in this and to read a couple of papers. So I cannot really talk very much about ECIs. In general, I think ECIs may serve two main purposes. They may either be an instrument for politicizing EU decision-making, and or they may have an educational purpose in as much as they lean on emotions, just as Thomas has argued before. I think this is very important. This is very important, especially for the young generation, to get socialized into European Union affairs and to feel that their voice may be heard and counts. So this is one aspect, one dimension of ECIs, politicization and education. And I'm very happy, and I completely share your attempt to get this through. I think universal suffrage is really a topic, it's a theme which has a much higher probability of being successful as an ECI as compared to the other initiatives we have seen before, which have failed. I think it was 6 altogether. Stop vivisection, ban glyphosate, One of Us, and all these other 4 or 5 initiatives which have not succeeded. I think universal suffrage is a point which promises to be much more successful in that respect, and also because it directly speaks not only to the people, to the citizens, and to the electorate of Europe, but also to the institutions in Brussels. So this is very positive. Now, the second dimension, I think, of ECIs is not so much concerned with education and politicization, but with consultation. So ECIs may have a consultative function in the overall context of the consultative system of participatory democracy and participatory policy making. But then I asked myself, well, what, and there I'm a little bit more critical compared to other possibilities or other needs or ways of how to democratize the European Union. ECIs may only represent a relatively small fraction of what is actually necessary. I am, and Justin will remember that we have been among the very first to raise the issue of interest intermediation at the European level when we published our book in '91, almost 30 years ago, on well, it was not on civil society and the European Union, it was more specifically on organized interests and the European community, or the European community as it was called at that time. And it was very much concerned with business. I mean, business interests, at least as long as far as the European Union is concerned, belong to civil society in the broadest sense. But then, of course, our research and professional interest shifted obviously more and more from business interests towards trade unions and towards civil society. But at that time, at least, it was not so much consultation, which was the main topic to be addressed. We disregarded consultation. Actually, the hot topic was concertation, concertative tripartite agreements or whatever, which had existed already since the 70s. That is collectivities of people, groups of people who really have the power to participate in decision making and to press for their interests. I mean, this is different now. In the case of ECIs, you promote an initiative, you join an initiative, and then eventually, if you are successful, you may be consulted by European Union institutions. So you cannot actually exert pressure on these institutions. Therefore, my own interest, at least from the point of view of participatory democracy or of governance at the level of the European Union, I would still much more go for collective action outlets. So that is either established NGOs and social movements at the European level or at the national or regional level or whatsoever. But I think that this aspect of collective groups tends to be very much disregarded by the most recent European Union initiatives, including the Conference on the Future of Europe. I think the term civil society is not even mentioned explicitly in the calls by the Commission for the Conference on the Future of Europe. The Commission very much focuses on individual consultation, on bilateral contacts. And therefore, many civil society organizations have criticized this attitude, arguing for a more regular, steady and more transparent integration of organized civil society into European community decision-making. So nevertheless, apart from this, I very much congratulate you for this initiative, because everything which promises to democratize the European Union is of course welcome. But you shouldn't forget, let's say, the larger context in which this is all embedded. And from this more broad perspective, I would say that the first aspect which I mentioned, that is politicization of EU decision-making and education of those who participate in this process is probably a much more important aspect as compared to the potential consultative function or the co-decision-making function of ECIs. I think this is all I have to say at the moment. Justin, I think Justin is a specialist of ECIs. I've just seen that yesterday for the first time, that you are studying these things for almost 10 years already, since it first popped up in 2011 or so. So I'm very interested to hear what you are saying in this respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Well, Justin, if you want to take the floor already, I know there is Daniela she raised her hand before. I don't know if she still want to intervene back. Okay, please, Daniela.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thank you. And I just want to make a quick point to that, how this initiative really has the potential to successfully use the ECI and in the best way possible. Because Mr. Grote just said that the 6 initiatives that reached the 1 million signatures, they were not successful in terms of, they were not successful politically. But that's not completely true. A few ECIs have seen some legislative action. For example, 1 or 2 years ago, the EU submitted a new EU directive on water, which was inspired directly by the ECI Right to Water. This was the first ever successful ECI. Yes, it came 6 years after the fact of the ECI submitting its success, and this is something we also criticize. We say, not only respond to the ECI, but do so in a timely manner that's then also relevant. But this is why I like to say that the ECI can help inspire legislation. I like to use this word inspire, because it doesn't necessarily lead to legislation in 100% of the cases. After all, the European Commission still has the right of initiative, and they can decide when and where, how they want to respond. But it has affected some policy. Stop Glyphosate also, for example, has seen some response. The license for glyphosate in the EU is usually giving on a 10-year basis, but it was under its last review, it was given the license was given on a 5-year basis, thanks to this ECI. Again, not a perfect way to respond. I mean, the ECI called for a complete stop on glyphosate, but it did inspire changes in some EU policy, which would not have been there if it was not then for this ECI. So I think the ECI, when we can think of it as, you can have the goal in mind, you have this 1 year, collect those 1 million signatures, or you can also use it as a tool to gain momentum on a certain topic. And I think that's something that also this initiative can think of. I mean, of course, getting the 1 million signatures, great. But I think getting as many signatures as possible and just creating conversation around the topic and creating that momentum, I think this is also a very appropriate way to use the ECI as well. In the end, it's a campaigning tool. It's a tool for campaigners. So you can use it in the way that you'd like. And I mean, I think we can, if we see that this initiative picks up great speed, picks up a lot of signatures, and it doesn't need to necessarily then meet that 1 million signatures within that 1 year, we can still use that then as a campaigning tool, reach out to the EU institutions and also tell them, there is this great initiative on a great idea. The EU has already started to talk about this topic. We've seen in some publications, and it's picking up some speed. So this is just maybe that extra push that we'll need to say there's also support there by the people. So just something also to keep in mind is that the ECI can be used also as a campaigning tool.
Anna, may I just very briefly add something? If I don't interrupt. Yeah. Okay, I actually forgot a small argument. Getting involved in studying this ECI stuff, I came across a very fresh paper on ECIs published in 2020, which comes up with that very interesting, but a little bit critical arguments. It's a paper by Manes Weiskircher on mobilization strategies and consequences, and the result of this paper are 2 basically. The first, he argues there is a kind of geographical bias in most, or there has been a kind of geographical bias in most ECIs so far, in as far as if you need these 1 million or 1,100,000 signatories, it turned out that in many of these cases, almost half or even more than half of these 1 million signatories came from 1 or 2 large member states, where only very few signatories came from, or whatever, from Cyprus or from Malta or so. So in this sense, it is not really, it does not really promote a European-wide kind of democratization initiative or so. It is very much focused on the larger member states. And the second aspect, very crucial, and that should be probably considered by you, is that in case of failure, and as we know, five or five of these initiatives have failed so far. In case of failure, there may be lots of unintended consequences. It may end up not in politicization, but in depoliticization, in disillusionment on the part of those who have participated, who have put in enormous energy over years and years and years into this initiative, and then at the very end, they get a response by the European Commission saying, well, this does not really is not consistent with the European law, and as in the case of the glyphosate ECI, for example. So these two aspects should at least be considered as potentially whatever critical aspects of the whole affair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grote. And yes, I mean, this is something to consider, and I think it's already been discussed at civil society level on how to improve PCI, but also combining it to other tools like a citizen assembly to agree, like a European citizen assembly where like the participants are extracted from, and represented all the social and all the demographics in Europe, and so that this gets further legitimization apart from these million signatures that is true sometimes may all come up from one or two member states in particular. I think our ECI is exactly the contrary, like it's really transnational in nature. So I think this won't be the case, but obviously we are looking at Germany because, as Daniela rightly states, is probably the country where to start and to propel this initiative, and then I think the other member states will pick up as well. So, but yeah, thank you for everybody, and I think we can I can already end the floor to Niccolò Milanese. So we already mentioned the conference and how ECI, civil society, and citizens can be possibly included in this conference. We still yet don't know. So please, maybe Niccolò, you can give an introduction to that, and then you can feel free to moderate the last panel. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Anna. My name's Niccolò Milanese. I'm a treasurer of ECID, but perhaps most pertinently to this conversation we're now going to have, I'm involved in something called Citizens Takeover Europe, which is a coalition of over 35 civil society organizations, nearly 40, which started earlier on this year to call for the European institutions to ensure that citizens and organized civil society are at the heart of the conference on the future of Europe. I'm not the only person on this call to be involved in that coalition, so I'm pleased to see some of my friends here. As has already been mentioned at the beginning of the call, the conference on the future of Europe was initially announced following the results of the European elections in 2019 and the somewhat unexpected appointment of Ursula von der Leyen as the Commission President. And it was part of what she called a new push for European democracy. And there was a need for a new push, or there is a need for a new push for European democracy to learn the lessons of the elections, but also in von der Leyen's specific case, to consider the issue of the Spitzenkandidaten process and how it ought to be reformed, given that she was not a Spitzenkandidatin at all, and yet she ends up president of the European Commission. Now, in the meantime, plenty has happened in the European Union and in the world, and notably there's a pandemic, and there's talk about health competencies for the European Commission, and all kinds of other issues have been associated with this conference on the future of Europe, which has yet to begin. But it's important to remember that democracy and the future of European democracy was sort of at the heart of the original reason for calling for this conference. And the Citizens Takeover Europe coalition, which started earlier on this year, wanted to remind everybody of this fact, to point out, as has already been quite rightly raised by Jürgen Groth, that in the discussions in the institutions about the Conference on the Future of Europe and how it ought to look, organized civil society has been almost entirely sidelined, and the way that individual citizens can take part is, to the extent that it's discussed at all, discussed in quite a marginal way. And so the Citizens Takeover Europe Coalition has been calling for civil society and citizens to be involved in co-designing the way the conference ought to be run, because if you want to have a process which involves citizens in the best possible way, well, maybe involve them in designing it, but it should be a transparent process, which the negotiations over it so far are totally intransparent, and that, quite perhaps importantly, there should be a strong commitment to follow up to what citizens propose as part of the conference. All of these are ingredients of making the conference itself, I dare say, an exercise in citizenship education. Now, Citizens Takeover Europe is one initiative calling for that, and both wanting to put pressure on the institutions and also to say no matter what the institutions decide, civil society is capable of organizing itself independently, and we plan to do that over the coming years. But also inside the institutions, people have been reminding the decision makers of the centrality of this democratic aspect. And I want just to mention here, because it seems to me to be pertinent to the discussion that has gone previously, but which will continue now, that the report drafted by Pascal Durand in the AFCO committee on the lessons from the European elections in 2019, which is awaiting to be voted for in the plenary, makes the case quite strongly for the centrality of democratic reform to be in the agenda of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And so there are initiatives coming from inside the institutions as well. I think the last thing I will say on the conference, to make the link with the issue of voting rights in national elections, is that although the Conference on the Future of Europe is not itself going to make treaty changes in the European Union, which would be the kind of thing that would perhaps be required to enable foreign nationals to vote in national elections throughout Europe, it is by some people considered as a kind of prelude to a process of treaty change. And so it's even more important to get the Conference on the Future of Europe right and to build it with citizens if we want to build momentum for treaty change to be conceivable in the future. So the Conference on the Future of Europe seems like an important subject to discuss, and as Anna said, I will try to guide us through this last section of our discussion, and we have at least three excellent people to help us discuss it. Maybe to start with someone who's actually in the institutions, Damien Bossolanger is with us, I believe. So maybe I give you the word first.
Thanks a lot. I don't know if Daniel Freund in the end made it, because he's our expert on that. No, okay.
He didn't. He's
perfect. Then I'll try my best. Yeah. So basically, maybe quickly to me, I'm the speaker of the Greens EFA group in the European Parliament, in the Constitutional Committee in AFCO, and also the founder of Volt Europa, which is like this European movement that is trying to build an actual European party. So the idea is that basically we have the same party in different member states, and we run for the European elections and also local, regional, and national elections to have somehow this connection between the local and the European level. So what I mean, like, how does this all connect? Maybe I start with a quick update on where the conference currently stands. So I mean, the overall idea I think was very well described. And now we're just basically waiting for the three institutions, so the president of the three institutions, so both the Commission, Council, and Parliament, to find an agreement. We have positions of all of these institutions to actually, what the conference should look like, and we tried to heavily influence that. And I can tell you a bit about what was important for me, what the conference should look like. And now they seem to not really advance due to Corona, but also due to a general, I think, disunity on what this conference should be about. So I really hope that this advances soon and that we can start. But the big question, I think, overarching the conference currently is obviously we all believe that in-person meetings are really necessary and helpful. And so how do we work with the current situation and Corona, and how can we make that work? My personal opinion is that we should at least start planning, and that is not currently happening. And I think we should definitely do that and start with the online part of such a conference and then make it work. To bind it a bit to the previous topic and about the whole question of electoral law, I'm also the person who works for the Greens on basically the electoral law reform, and I'm trying to go through that a bit in detail, because there's obviously a range of issues that go beyond the issue of not being able to vote well for the European elections from out of other countries. There's, issues concerning the registration of parties for the elections. There's issues of being able to be physically electable. I can tell you interesting stories about trying to get 150,000 signatures in Italy to be able to run for the European parliamentary elections. I can tell you stories about France, where you need around 800,000 euros to print your own ballot papers and then physically send them to the different electoral offices, basically to the ballot, so that you're physically electable. If you don't do that, then you might be on the list, but you can't. People can't actually vote for you because they need to take a piece of paper and throw it in. And if your piece of paper is not there, then you can't. So there are these ranges of barriers of entry. There's a lot of, I think, democratic standards that we need to put up, especially if you look towards the US today. I think we can see that. We can take from the US elections whatever you want. I think the one thing that we can all take from it is that trust in a very good electoral system is at the core of democracy. And so we should definitely try to always improve our democratic system as much as possible. How does that bind back to the conference? For me, the conference would work in a way that we discuss for, let's say, 2 years in 3-month cycles, which means that we pre-discuss a bit with citizens online what the topics would be. I guess one would be climate, one could be health, one could be defense, whatever people, or migration, I guess, whatever people are interested in. And then we discuss them in closed 3-month cycles. That would enable citizens to actually follow what's going on, very focused on a single topic. And it would allow the media to build some energy around it. And it would allow them to actually be this kind of exchange that we want, where citizens are actually heard and can really define their idea about what they think about health, what Europe should really do about health, for example. And I think that would enable us to actually make advances. If the conference is in the end just another consultation process, where the commission is listening and it's a better form of a survey, I think then we missed a huge chance of actually building a conference that creates a political pressure for a better European Union. And so I think that's a very important point for me. And then once we have discussed these points, I think it will come out every time that we need institutional change. And that's the topic of this context. It is clear that across a range of issues, the reason why the EU is not being able to fully act is because we still have this medieval kind of idea of a council that is able to, block with a veto power in many points. And then something happens like the meeting, which was kind of positive even, but in July, where the heads of state come together and try to barter out a deal. And that, I think, when it comes to foreign policy or health or whatever, I think we will come to the point of understanding that we will need some form of a change. We will need to get to a parliamentary democracy and basically a functioning European Union that is able to act fast on the issues that are most pertinent. I'll stop here. There's a lot to say about how useful and meaningful citizen participation would look like. That was my main try to contribute to this paper of the position from the Parliament on the conference. I think it has to be a two-way street and so on. But I'll stop here and give the other speakers also some time, because I see that time is quite.
Thanks very much, Tanja, for packing so much into an intervention. Indeed, the time is getting short. The news is we can continue to discuss even if the live stream may at some point stop. So don't keep your remarks concise, but don't feel under too much pressure. Maybe if I could come next to Jürgen Klüt, a former member of the European Parliament, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, hello to every one of you, and thank you very much for inviting me to contribute to this workshop and conference. Yes, I think it's a very interesting question. What chances are there for democratic reforms in the context of the conferences on the future of Europe? That was a question you tabled to us, to this panel. On one hand, I think it's a very good idea to have such a kind of conference on the future of Europe. I think we need it really, there is no doubt. But on the other hand, I have a lot of doubts whether it will work. I have some concrete questions concerning these issues and arguments. The first point is how will be involved? On one hand, how many people will be involved? If you will do, we have around about 440 million citizens in Europe. And if you will involve only some hundreds, and setting, I know it's in discussion now, can include only a very few people. And that means you can't really reach the majority of the European peoples. And then it's a question whether it's really a European conference on the future of Europe or only a small discussion between some experts and elected people. Then the next question is who elect the people who should take part in this conference. Can everybody apply for participation, or will it be a decision of the European institutions? Another point is, will critics be included in this conference? We have, caused by the crisis 10 years ago, a lot of critics against the European Union. Should they be involved in this conference, or should they be excluded from this conference? I think it's a really crucial question to include the critics of the European Union as well, to try to convince them, to get them on board. If you will include them, we will lose them, and the split inside the European Union will increase. And then it's a question of the setting. Damian spoke about the institutional changes. As I know, the Council is not ready to speak about this. The Parliament is open to speak about everything, but the Constitution is not really, the Council is not really open to speak about everything the European citizens want to speak about. And therefore, it's a question of the setting. Is it a closed, a limited agenda?
And welcome back again for the second time. We're here in the second round of the Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action. I hope that you've enjoyed the time you've spent in your parallel sessions. I can see that our guests are already with us, or at least two of them I can see at the moment. A little bit later on, my colleague Dirk is sharing the stage with me again here at the Berlin Congress Center. And we're going to be having a couple of sound bites from the sessions which have taken place up to now to give you an impression of what's been going on behind the scenes, and perhaps also to nudge you into exploring the presentations, the input, the discussions that have also been taking place in House Space if you weren't able to attend one of those sessions. So, Before we take a look at those sound bites from the parallel sessions, we're going to actually begin with our next pitches of projects which are actually taking place, and we have 3 pitches for you this time. We're going to begin with Roman Schröder, Stay Better Informed with filterbubble.lu and propaganda.guide. So Roman, are you online with me?
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi, good to see you again. I think we met just recently.
Yes, yeah.
Indeed. It's lovely that you're going to be pitching your project here. And Roman, I'm simply going to give you a countdown if you'd like to share your screen. So we're ready to roll then. Okay, and then I will simply count down and hand over to you. So 3, 2, 1, over to you, Roman.
Yes, hi to everybody. Well, I would like to present 2 web tools to you. Well, in order to make informed decisions, you have to get your hands on reliable facts, and you have to confront your opinion with your opinion of others. And especially in times when most of the people get their information from social media, this seems to be increasingly difficult. And this is why the Zentrum für politische Bildung made 2 web tools available in English, French, and German. One of those tools is filterbubble.lu. How deep are you stuck in your filter bubble? I guess there's no need to explain to you what a filter bubble is, but there are many people who are not aware of those bubbles and who are not aware of the consequences of those bubbles. And this is why we put up a test with some questions. You just have to answer by a simple yes or no. And at the end of the test, you will get an impression on how deep you are stuck in your bubble, and you will get some tips on how to burst this bubble. Additionally, we have some educational material available for teachers and educators to work on this with young people. A second tool is called propaganda.guide. And again, if you rely on information coming mostly from social media, you will be confronted with a lot of half-truths, lies, misleading messages, which are quite often difficult to distinguish from reliable information. The website propaganda.guide helps to expose false information from reliable information. And by doing this, if you are in front of a post, a tweet, a video, a poster, you can ask yourself 10 simple questions you will find on our web tool. You can answer them by swiping yes or no, a little yes, a little or a lot of no. And this will get you an impression on whether you're confronted with neutral information or if there is someone wanting you to act or to think in a specific way. Again, here you will find additional information and educational tools for educators and teachers on our website. So go and have a look, propaganda.guide, filterbubble.lu, and give it a try. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Roman. And I'm very glad that you presented this project. This is something very different from the other projects that we've seen so far, and it shows once again the diversity of action that is being taken. We're going to move on to our second pitch and another familiar face. Hello, Chris. I'd just like to say a word of introduction to you, Chris Grimmen-Prez. She is a researcher at the University of Leuven in Belgium. Her PhD and book on the European Union and Education for Democratic Citizenship forms the foundation for the Case for EU, which is an innovation project for EU learning. So it's lovely to have you here also, Chris.
Thank you.
Would you like to share your screen, Chris, so that you're ready for your pitch?
Yes.
Okay, that's looking very good. Wonderful. And then 3, 2, 1, the floor is yours, Chris.
Thank you very much. Case for EU is a Jean Monnet project at Leuven University in Belgium. It's a focus on case teaching about EU rights and values in secondary schools. We want to empower for active citizenship by teacher training and developing didactic materials. We work in a cooperation of the faculties of law, social science and political science, philosophy, and teacher training. To have a stable construction, we base EU learning on two pillars. On the one hand, there is objectivity, which we guarantee by working with the EU treaties signed by all member states and the Charter of Fundamental Rights. On the other hand, to invite for critical thinking and pluralism, we propose to work with cases. No smell of EU propaganda. Cases are real happened stories about people like you and me who all at once discovered that rules by the EU impacted on their daily lives and they went to court. Our stories are based on cases decided by the Court of Justice of the European Union. We explain the citizens' rights and then we delve deeper to find the DNA of the EU that is involved in the case, EU values, objectives and principles. In this way, we come to knowledge and we invite critical thinking because in a case, very often a balancing is to be made. So wake up, EU citizens. Time has come to teach about EU rights and obligations, to discuss them, to change them by participating in democratic life of the EU. Case teaching is a valuable tool to empower for active EU citizenship. Case for EU, is it a case for you? Our project develops a bundle of some 40 case cards in many fields. They make EU learning attractive, fun, and profound. Contact us if you are interested. Choose a case in your field of interest and test it out. You are very welcome. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. That was, once again, top standard, as I've come to expect of you in our interactions over the last months. So we're going to close the last project for this second round of Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action with a pitch from, and I do apologize in advance because I'm probably mispronouncing your name, and please feel free to correct me. And it's Asali Siarai. And
yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, and the topic is going to be fostering democratic citizenship via e-learning. And would you like to share your screen, Salai?
Yes. Just 1 second.
Okay. Yes, that's looking very good. So I will hand over to you. 3, 2, 1, over to you.
Yeah. Hello to everyone. My name is Sergei Salei. I'm from Belarus, and I would like to present a project that was developed by my organization, which is a WIT Association, within the work of the East European Network for Citizenship Education, NECE. The project itself was developed in order to overcome difficulties related to COVID-19 pandemic, in particular the problems that arise in professional context and communication between civic educators in our region, meaning 6 countries of Eastern Partnership and Russia. So the goal of the project was the contribution to fostering of democratic citizenship in our region that was mentioned in the countries through quality human rights and history online education tailored to the local needs. And our project had 4 objectives. The first objective was to train members of the project team in creation of online courses. In order to do that, there was a special course, how to develop online courses, and representatives of 5 countries from our region took part in that course. As a result of the course, we developed 4 online courses that address contemporary challenges in teaching history and human rights. And also there was an aim to present results of the project to the public, and it was already presented in the NECE campus during the Civic Education Week that was run within the NECE network. And also today is one of the opportunities to present results of the project to the wider public. And also a web of instant training activities online. The topics of online courses you see on the screen, they are introduction to human rights-based approach in education, civic journalism and video blogging, and memory of the World War II in the Eastern Partnership countries and Russia, politics and practice. These courses were developed by members of two working groups that work within the NECE. One of the working group is promoting human rights education, and the second is human rights in history, civic education and history. All the courses are placed on the Moodle platform. You could see how it looks like. All the courses are in Russian at the moment, but we plan to translate them into English in the future. And each course consists of 4 parts: introductory module, 4 thematic modules, final module, and course evaluation. And everything is provided on Moodle platform, as you saw, and also there are Zoom webinars within each of the modules. Target group for our project are formal and non-formal educators from NECE region. And the expected results are professional development of educators of our target group and also the active civic participation. Speaking about the lessons learned within the project, I would like to mention a number of them. First of all, related to the content of the course. It proved that these topics, human rights and history, are really relevant for our region. For example, such issues like historical memory, understanding of citizenship and activism are still an issue of debate within the between the countries. So this was really interesting and important to understand, and communication between our participants of our project helped us to overcome difficulties related to different understanding of the content. And also, it was really interesting to mention that cooperation that was developed within the project was also a really good outcome of the project. And speaking about the fourth lesson, which is technology, it was really nice that we have opportunities to use modern technologies to overcome the difficulties of the pandemics and different other crises. But unfortunately, there are some problems, psychological problems related to online teaching. People are really fed up with online. They would want to go more offline. That is why one of the recommendations that we already have is just to try to balance online and offline activities. So this is really important for the success. Yeah, so thank you. I think it was all.
Thank you very much. So we've had 3, again, extremely diverse projects. We still have 1 round of Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action, and that will be taking place after our final round of parallel sessions. That means at 5:30, the Spotlight will be broadcast here from the live stage once again. The next parallel sessions will be beginning at 4 o'clock. But just before we say a day for the moment, or adieu for the moment, I'd like to just ask Dirk, my colleague, so would you like to give us a couple of sound bites of the things that you've been picking up over the day today?
Sure, thanks a lot, Tanja. I've been listening into the panel on is there a role for NGOs in transformation of society, and giving it a critical assessment. And while I was eavesdropping into that discussion, it was really interesting, and I just joined them when they started to debate, actually, is civil society still driving the debate, or have they lost their cloud around it there? And very quickly, the discussion turned around actually the difference between organized and less organized civil society actors, and actually how they can interact with it there. And with most of the recent big society societal changes or so, there was an upheaval that was preceding it. And if you look at those upheavals, it was before there was actually a strong civil society active around it there. And one example was being given around the rise of Extinction Rebellion or Fridays for Future that provided that necessary spotlight or disruptive elements, but probably wouldn't have been possible with all the groundworks that have been laid by organized civil society organizations, which provides effect. It sounded a little bit like what we had yesterday already in our discussions around different players or different stakeholders in the civic space can actually fulfill different functions. Yeah, so there was space for people who actually document and create transparency. There is a big and important space for organizations and groupings that provide disruption and put a spotlight on things and put the pressure on it to actually go and get the necessary sense of urgency as well. And there probably also needs to be a space for civil organizations that actually provide solutions and start shaping the way going forward around it there. So it will be really interesting to see how they continue to interact in the future. That was a short soundbite that I had while listening into that panel. And the second one is just looking at the title.
Well, if I could actually hop in there just for a moment, because interestingly, the panel discussion about the background and situation in Belarus and art activism is such a beautiful follow-on from the discussions that were taking place yesterday. And there were just impressive examples shown of how art activism can actually make a difference. The examples were protest songs, paintings, other visual arts being presented as a form of civic resistance. So I think this picks up really on so many of the points that were being made yesterday, that it can be resistance forcing change, and art can move as opposed to just capture things that have happened. Many of the speakers were showing their solidarity with the civilian population in Belarus, and a statement from the talk was that art is a powerful form of citizenship education, and I'm sure you agree with that.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's really nice to see how all those discussions actually come all together from a very, very high level meta perspective, and then actually hearing it from lots of examples on the ground in specific regions. It's really nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. What was the second soundbite you had, Dirk?
The second panel I've been eavesdropping in was called Unavailable and Inaccessible, Schools Closures and Students' Voice. And that was also very, very interesting. And I think people shared a really great insights in there. The first sentence I've heard eavesdropping into that discussion was around, at the moment, most of the, let's say, less fortunate regions across Europe, people are much more concerned with just providing for the basic needs and just getting food on the table, as was the sentence said. So it's really providing for your family actually dominates and puts every other discussion a little bit at the back burner. And that, of course, also has a big impact on school, especially if students have to stay home, and that adds to the complexity around it there. Teachers, of course, had to really switch very, very quickly to a completely different way of engaging with their students. And that, of course, creates a lot of pressure for them as well. But they actually found out it's not the digitalization or staying or providing the lectures and the curriculum to people which sounded to be the most challenging one. It's actually staying close to the students and actually getting a feel on their mental health as well and on their well-being. And people have been experimenting with lots of different formats of surveys and staying in contact with them. Another big point was around it's quite okay to get organized for a present school. It's also quite good to stay organized for a digital world of it there, but actually getting into that hybrid world of having some people in the school and some people at home and joining remotely, that's when it gets really difficult. Another example was coming actually from Greece. That was around, it's a country which has been in a crisis mode for such a very long time, and teachers are proportionately aged, so they already have difficulties with digitalization around it there, and actually have taken big income cuts. So how can you expect a teacher force that has been suffering for such a long time to actually go and invest on their own time and own budgets into their digital infrastructure to take schooling back from home?
Okay, both of those topics just sound so fascinating, and I'd like to mention one of the projects that came up here, and this was based on the reference framework of competencies for democratic culture and the title One Framework, Many Contexts. Interestingly, there was a huge amount of overlap here with one of the talks that was taking place this morning already. And that the topics that were coming up, oh, sorry, no, I take that back. That was a mistake. In fact, I have something else I want to say to that. I'm going to revise what I just said, but I'll come to the final project in a moment. But you'll recognize the messages yet again, and it's about access to technology, particularly for young people, is not equal, and how this falls into the broader context of digital competencies for both learners and teachers. And that with the framework of competencies for democratic education, it revolved around different projects, but how it could be used systematically to select games, and there were several examples of this, and how the framework itself was also incorporated as a major reference for game development, how to integrate the competencies in the play process of the game itself. And there was also, particularly when referencing behaviors or values, attitudes, skills, knowledge, or critical understanding, and how it helped provide a shared language and particularly a shared terminology for the conceptualization and competency descriptions. Of course, this all provided an enrichment of the discussion around democracy, but not only for the participants of the game, but already at the partnership level in the development of the games themselves. And that then touches on the final point I'd just like to mention, which has a lot of overlap with an earlier discussion today. And the talk was about youth engagement and civic education, and the European Youth Parliament was involved here. And again, looking at technical knowledge and infrastructure and the whole question of how do you keep your audience engaged? And exactly these points were being touched upon during the European Youth Work and Citizenship Education for Diverse Target Groups this morning in our earlier parallel sessions. The questions were exploring the topics of digital versus hybrid models, which work, what doesn't work so well, how can you achieve outreach to new target groups, which again touches upon one of the topics from this morning, and how, interestingly, through digitalization, previous barriers may in fact have been removed in the meantime. And another topic that was touched upon was the Corona empowerment. And this question for all of us of how do we engage with people during this pandemic? How do we engage with them, particularly in this overabundance of digital content that people are facing at the moment? So I have a very final word before we leave you to get a cup of coffee before the parallel sessions start. And it is, if you would like to see more information about the Spotlight on Citizenship Education in Action, all of the pictures that we've seen so far and the 3 remaining ones, please go to HouseSpace, open up the tab for the conference program and menu, and the final point, Marketplace of Good Practice Projects. That is where you will find the dedicated page of all of the pictures that we've heard so far and the remaining ones. So I wish you a wonderful round in the last session of parallel sessions that will be beginning in 5 minutes. So see you back here at 5:30.